Hello and welcome to another edition of Bucks Podcast. I am Anthony Deneau, along with Kyle McEwen and Terrell Drevick. We are coming to you live after a Bucks victory, which is really nice, as seeing as how our last episode went down, and we talked more about Sheryl Crow than we did the Milwaukee Bucks because of our just to get through the sadness. But tonight, at least for a little while, we'll talk some basketball before we get to Sheryl Crow. Terrell, Bucks got off to a hot start tonight. This was great to see after Thursday's really awful performance coming off that back-to-back. This is their second game at home in 4 days, so nice to be home for a little bit. That helped after the road trip mixed with the back-to-backs and just kind of a mess of a schedule here as we wrap things up and get ready for the postseason. Tonight was a bigger deal because you're facing a potential playoff opponent, someone that you might face in the third round is right now how it would, kind of look in the Eastern Conference Finals, looking to be the Eastern Conference champion. It feels like it's going to be the Sixers or the Celtics right now. That's how it's going to line up. Hopefully the Bucks are there, and good to see the Bucks get a win against a playoff opponent, another tough opponent. They haven't really beat a very good team in a while, especially so handily. Not that tonight was not in question, at least for a little bit, but what was your thoughts, at least on how the game started tonight?
Yeah, let's clap it up for the boys. How about that? That's what you want to do. Way to go, Milwaukee. So, after being blown out on Thursday by Boston, what did the Bucks do tonight? They opened the game shooting 8 for 8 and finishing the first quarter shooting 70%. That's how you want to punch a team in the mouth right there. 41 points after the first quarter, and you're sharing the basketball too. It wasn't just one player going off tonight. Now, if we want to talk about later in the game, I always call these quarter killers is what I call them. And tonight, the quarter killer was the third quarter. It seemed like nothing was going right for the Bucks opening the third quarter. The Sixers got it to within 4 points, but here's the bright spot in that: they found a player that was hot, and they kept him hot, and that was Bobby Portis. He had the baseline push shot going tonight, and he also had the 3-point shot going tonight too. So, yeah, it was a bad third quarter, but they never gave the lead, and they responded the appropriate way.
Yeah, and they closed out the third quarter in a big way as well to make you feel like as good as the Sixers came out ready to try to make a run back against the Bucks, that it was good that after getting hit, the Bucks had a response and they closed it out strong. When once Embiid went off the court and Paul Reed was in there, you just I don't want to blame it all on Paul Reed necessarily, but like Giannis just started going hard, and the Bucks were getting a lot of what seemed like not necessarily easy buckets, but they were just getting whatever they wanted.
Anytime Giannis saw Paul Reed or former teammate PJ Tucker, he was absolutely attacking these guys, attacking them, going to the rim as hard as he could, trying to make them foul him or that he would get an easy deuce, and oftentimes that's how that was the result. Terrell, what was the difference between? There was just so much difference in the style and everything that we saw tonight versus Thursday night. It seemed like the Bucks were playing faster. They were sharing the ball. There was more off-ball movement. They were playing with just more of a purpose, I guess.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing we saw tonight was, compared to Thursday, was that the Bucks actually hit outside shots tonight. When you start doing that, the defense has to actually start guarding the perimeter, which means that the easy 2-point shot down below, we saw Drew Holiday. He would sit in the short corner, or he make like a late second flash cut in the middle, and they'd find him right in the middle for a lay-in. Like that's what opens it up. You can't set up a wall if the team's hitting outside shots. Yeah, on Thursday the Bucks weren't hitting outside shots, so you could set up that wall. But tonight, that's all it took was a big first quarter to start hitting 3-pointers, pull that defense out, and let them become more vulnerable.
Kyle, three-headed attack. You've got, with Embiid, Harden, and Maxey. And that's one of the tougher trios, really, that the Bucks are going to face. They're one of the few teams that has three players scoring, averaging 20 points a night. A lot of scoring from those guys. What did you see from them tonight that you maybe was different than usual against facing the Bucks, or how does this trio really stack up against other trios in the league?
Did Harden take a shot in the first quarter? I don't think he did. And that's not a
That's
good sign.
interesting.
It's he's we've seen it all season. He wants to be more of a facilitator in this arrangement that he's in, and it's I mean it's one thing to step to the side and say, okay, Embiid and Maxey are both amazing players as well, and they can get us plenty of efficient scoring. But James Harden has shown he's one of the best isolation scorers in the history of the NBA. And the fact that he's kind of walked away from that in a lot of ways is disconcerting. If you're a Sixers fan, like, is he still just not? Is that hamstring injury from a couple years ago that lingered for like a year and a half? Is that still an issue for him? Will it always be an issue, or is he just not as fast as he used to be? He didn't never really. If he did have athleticism and speed, it was kind of understated in some ways back in the day. I know he doesn't necessarily rely on that. It's just, yeah, it's look. I'm not afraid of the Sixers. They don't have enough to stop a healthy Bucks team. And could they push it to 6 or 7 games? Sure, but ultimately, I would think the Bucks would be coming out on top.
Terrell, it looked like you had something to say.
Yeah, the Sixers tonight, there was a big surprise, a head scratcher from me watching them, and that was in the fourth quarter. Now, I don't know if I should be reading too much into this, but to start the fourth quarter, as the Sixers, you're down by 14 to the Bucks, and you put in your second unit, but also James Harden too. Is that to me, that tells me that Harden can't play with Embiid and Maxey on the same floor because it's a different style, and they want to keep those two, that tandem together, and then Harden go off and do your own isolation basketball offense. I don't know if I'm reading into that too much, but it seems like when you're down by 14 going into the fourth quarter, you probably don't want to put your second unit out there because the Bucks could push it to 20 with a flick of a switch. And it seems like that's what they did tonight. And once you're down by 20, you say, well, boys, Embiid, Maxey, let's go out there and let's actually try to make it a game. It's like, well, you didn't do us any favors by putting out the second unit. I don't know. It was a surprise to me that they would go that route and rest the guys and then say, oh, if it's close, you're playing the rest of the game.
Kyle, you said some interesting stuff about the Sixers, which I agree with because while they are the third team in the Eastern Conference, one of the NBA's best teams, I don't view them as a championship contender. I think that they're a piece or two away, whether it be a couple of really good bench role players or another starter. I think they're just not quite on the level in the Eastern Conference of the Celtics and the Bucks. I don't put if I had a handful of teams to pick for the NBA Finals, the Sixers just aren't quite there. If there were some injuries and the Sixers were to stay healthy, then I could maybe see them representing the Eastern Conference. But as things currently stand, I just don't think the Sixers are quite at that next level yet, even with the dominant scoring trio of Embiid, Harden, and Maxey.
It's dude, it's the fact that Harden's not what he once was, or that he doesn't want to be that dominant scorer. And it's just weird because you want teams to be afraid of you, and he should be trading on and off big nights with Joel Embiid, or they should both be getting big nights like a tandem of Brown and Tatum. And the fact that you're not seeing that from Harden, like you don't see that desire in him to be that number one option consistently, it's got to be super frustrating if you're a Sixers fan or a Harden fan and knowing what's in him, and the fact that it's just put away on a shelf somewhere for some reason. It's super bizarre.
I love this stat line from James Harden so much. Originally, I was a big fan of his. I was a big fan of his at Arizona State. I loved him at OKC. I loved him on the Rockets for a while. And then there were some of those years where it was Harden versus Giannis for MVP talk about 2 or 3 years in a row. and there was just so much stuff like between the two fan bases, and I sadly grew to hate James Harden and kind of how he suckers referees into calls and does stuff that I just don't really like. But it's funny because Kyle, you would say that I did some of those same things when we would play City League basketball at times.
Yeah, the kind of stuff that would make you deservedly get thrown on the ground for no reason at all.
Oh my God. A pickup game about 10 years ago between, I don't know, some buddies after the YMCA had closed. And I'm guarding Kyle in the post, and he's upset at my defense. And he thought, I don't know.
I thought it was aggressive for the kind of basketball we were playing at the time. I guess I was being a little punk, though, if I look back on it, to be honest. Yeah.
Kyle grabbed me by the shirt and threw me to the ground because of the way I was defending him in the post.
I grew up watching the Detroit Pistons bad boys, man.
Rasheed Wallace.
Well, no, like Bill Lambier and
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
That's great.
All those cats. John Sally. Like,
Dennis Rodman, sure.
yeah.
Anyway, James Harden tonight, 11 points in 34 minutes to go with 6 assists and 2 rebounds. Pretty rough stuff. That's, like I said, at one point I was a big fan of his, but seeing nights like tonight, especially against the Bucks, it does kind of make me happy. As maybe it's kind of sad that I feel that way, but he's second on the team in minutes tonight and puts up a really subpar game for something that you would want to see as they kind of get into the playoffs against a potential Eastern Conference Finals opponent. 5 turnovers. Really rough stuff. He had 3 personal fouls in the first half. He had 2, and then in the second quarter, there was actually a foul called against Chris Middleton defending Harden, and Chris Middleton got up and ran to the Bucks bench, and he's like, "This, you have to overturn this. You have to challenge this. He hooked me. He grabbed my arm and hooked me. This is going to be an offensive foul." And Coach Bud is really one to save his challenges for usually the fourth quarter on a foul that goes against Giannis to try and switch the other way, whether that be Giannis driving, getting an offensive foul, or a defensive kind of defending the rim situation, whatever. Typically, the Bucks will almost always save that challenge to remove a foul from Giannis's stat line and keep him in the game as long as they can, especially if it's a close game. But we've seen over the last week or two, Brook Lopez, within the last week, also in a first half went to the bench and Coach Bud and was able to get Coach Bud to agree to call a timeout, make a challenge, see if you can get that call reversed. And that was the case. There was a couple minutes left in the second quarter. This ended up being James Harden's 3rd foul, so he had to sit the rest of the second quarter and didn't come back until half. And that was kind of a big thing that maybe, helped Harden kind of not basically kept him from getting into rhythm and not being able to play those last few minutes and hurting his chances of getting their team a little bit closer back into the game.
Correct. You nailed it right there. He was out of rhythm all night. I think a lot of that has to do with, let's give credit to Drew Holiday. He forced 3 turnovers right away in the game, picked his pocket a couple times, and from there, it just seemed like James Harden just, whenever he gets the ball stolen from him, he kind of just, I don't know, he just gives up, or he has that body language, that nonverbal communication that you're not supposed to do.
Mm-hmm.
He does a lot of standing, and we know he's not really much for a defender at all, but it just seemed like he wasn't all ready to play tonight. And let's go back to the hook and hold from James Harden too. So there's one thing I want to comment on here, because it seems like with these rule changes and they introduce new rules, and we're still learning the game based on these new rules, right? How about you don't get your challenge back if you win it? I didn't know that until tonight.
That's really an awful thing that I hope they look at this offseason. If not, I know they're putting together CBA stuff, which isn't quite where, this rule could still be changed regardless of CBA. But I was surprised that last season in the offseason when they changed the rules of the take foul, that this wasn't part of it, that if you get your challenge correct, especially if you challenge one in the first half and you get it right, there's no reason you shouldn't get at least one challenge in the second half, at the very least, if not just another challenge to use at any point in the game. So to me, I've always thought that was a silly rule and was really surprised that NBA wasn't proactive in changing that last offseason. I would guess and hope that this offseason that's going to change. Kyle, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, to be honest, I don't pay attention to it like overly, so that's hilarious that I didn't realize that either, that they don't get the they aren't allowed to get another chance for it. That's just dumb. That doesn't make
Yeah.
any sense. If you get it right, like if you get it wrong and you're delaying the game and you're just being obstinate, cool.
Mm-hmm.
You don't get another challenge. But if you get it right, you should get another opportunity to use your challenge. That doesn't make any sense that you would be forfeiting the opportunity later. But then again, this is all informed from our experience with it in the NFL, right?
In some cases, yes, where you get a
And the
couple
NFL
challenges.
is the dumbest league in the world, even dumber than the NBA can be at sometimes. So, yeah.
But I think that rule and it being just one and done, even right or wrong, it's one challenge and done, is why Coach Bud is so he really holds on to those challenges and saves them for typically saving Giannis, if not saving Brook at the end of a game. Terrell, you talked about Drew Holiday's defense against James Harden. I think the Bucks have been the best team defending Harden for a number of years now, and just the style that they go after him. And this really goes back to even Eric Bledsoe. And the whole thing was to just force him left and play without hands. I know that sounds crazy, but just not let James Harden use your arms and hands against you and creating those fouls to get him to the line that he was just so good at for those, that MVP season and beyond, and really helped him to be that 30, 35 point a game scorer for a whole season. So Bledsoe doing that, and then Dante DiVincenzo kind of took it from there. And that was my big worry in the championship year, is that DiVincenzo was hurt in the first round against the Heat. You play Harden and the Nets in the second round. You don't have DiVincenzo, who is a really good defender and knows how to defend James Harden. Now you've got Drew Holiday, another guy who's just, he's better than DiVincenzo or Bledsoe, and those guys did a great job. And now we have like an all-world defender defending really any position that you can think of. So the Bucks, I think, just know how to defend Harden, and that's such a huge deal, and that's why you see him struggle at times against the Bucks and get so frustrated at times. I will say his defense has improved, but you're right, Terrell. He's never going to be an all defensive kind of guy.
I do think it's kind of interesting that even with Tyrese Maxey having a game where he's shooting 6 of 7 from 3 for the Sixers, they were never really like, they made a threatening run in the third, but they didn't sustain,
Mm-hmm. Do you think, Terrell, do you feel like the Bucks were kind of like, well, if one guy's going to beat us, it's going to be Tyrese Maxey, because we're going to take care of Harden and we're going to throw all that we can at Embiid, and Lopez is one of the few guys that you feel like can give Embiid a hard time throughout the game?
Yep, that's exactly right. So Embiid's averaging 33 points a game. Let him get his 33 a game. Just don't let Tyrese Maxey beat you, because if you have two guys that are 33 and 30, that's a recipe for disaster. That could be a recipe for a loss. So I think you're right on that. I think if you limit Tyrese Maxey, although he had a huge game though.
No, that's what I'm saying. I think the Bucks were saying stop Harden, stop Embiid, and Tyrese Maxey is the one who they're going to say, well, if he's going to get his, he's going to get his. That's fine. We're going to stop the other two, because that's kind of the main driving forces of the Sixers team, and if they want to win.
Yeah, you look at a stat line like this: Maxey with 29 points, Embiid 28 points, Harden with 11. So maybe that's that was the difference of stopping that trio.
Right.
Honestly, I think the biggest problem for the Sixers is Harden's indifference to being dominant. But that's partly why I don't look at them as a legitimate threat.
Do you think this goes back to the Nets and making him more of a pass first point guard, or what? You think he's the step slow and still the hamstring injury that you mentioned earlier? For it to be as sustained as it is, as it has been, it's either the fact that he's
not capable of being the same player, but that doesn't feel legitimate enough of an excuse. It feels more like a psychological thing where it views himself as a facilitator, as a point guard.
Hmm.
And that started back with D'Antoni in Houston, where D'Antoni just came out one summer on podcast when he took over coaching the Rockets, and he's like, oh, James is our point guard. So yeah, he's always been a point guard. I mean, he's gonna be just about as good as Steve Nash. So, god darn,
You sound just like him.
That's
Thank
great.
you.
That's good stuff.
There is one topic I want to hit on tonight, if that's okay.
Hit it.
All right. So Lisa, she asked Marcus during the game, what gives Embiid the edge over Giannis for MVP if those two guys were in the running for 1 and 2? And Marcus kind of gave an answer like, well, I think it's more of a psychological thing. Like Jokic, he won 2, Giannis won 2 already, and Embiid, well, he's having a good season, so I think he could win 2 here this season. And I was like, I don't know if I like that answer, but I thought about it some more, and I was like, you know what? I think it comes down to minutes played. I don't think Giannis plays a lot of minutes compared to Embiid, and Embiid, the more minutes you play, the more shots you put up, the more stats you put up, right? I think that's the difference or the edge over Giannis. Would you agree?
I actually think the minutes played is more of a case for Giannis because he puts up similar numbers in less minutes, and his numbers aren't that far off from Embiid, and he's playing maybe 32 a game. And if you look at the the whole per 36 minutes, Giannis. Go ahead, Kyle.
So they're both pretty close. Giannis is playing 32 a game over the course of the season, and Embiid is playing 33. So,
Oh, wow,
no,
okay.
I'm sorry. Embiid's playing 34 and a half for the season. I was looking at how many points per game Embiid was scoring, which is
I got you.
33, which is nuts.
So they're fairly close. I guess I hate the voter fatigue thing, and that's frustrating. If you want to say that the Bucks are just such a deep team, and that's why they don't want to give it to Giannis, I guess I'm okay with that. But you've also not had some major key contributors for different stretches. Like Chris Middleton missed basically the first half of the season. You didn't get Jay Crowder. You guys know the story. We've gone over this, but to me, is it the team success? Like the Bucks are just so good that's why they don't want to give it to Giannis because he's already had a couple MVPs and they don't want to give it to Giannis, or Jokic is just the triple double from a center is just so incredible that they want to give it to him. I don't know. It's a weird thing. Have we seen a duo MVP before? Was it Iverson and Shaq, or was that scoring title that they tied for in like 2001 or something?
That I don't know.
I'll check her out.
Oh my gosh. I was trying to find like reasons to go, okay, is it Embiid? Is it Giannis?
Or is it Jokic?
Well, I went and counted their number of 40-point games, and they both have 12.
Wow. It's
Yeah.
that close.
Mm-hmm. And they're both super. I mean, obviously the most important player for their teams. They both have great supporting cast. When you're talking about these MVPs and whatnot, a lot of it comes down to narrative. Especially like Marcus Johnson was saying, you get to a point where it's and like you're expressing, Anthony, the voter fatigue thing, the idea that like we've already celebrated Giannis, we've already celebrated Jokic.
Mm-hmm.
Let's celebrate somebody else.
There's also this thing about the NBA not wanting to be very careful on who gets 3 MVPs or who gets 3 in a row because Michael Jordan never got 3 in a row. Larry Bird's the last person to do it, 84, 85, 86. Michael Jordan has, 5 MVPs? Let's see here, 98, 96, 92, 91, 98. So he's 88. That is. So he's got 5, but never got 3 in a row. Magic Johnson had just 1 MVP. Nope, 2, but 3, but never 3 in a row. Larry Bird's the last person to have 3 in a row. So I don't know. That's another reason why people were saying, well, Giannis isn't going to get 3 in a row because nobody else has since Bird. And now Jokic won't get 3 in a row because nobody else has since Bird. And so that's why a lot of people are looking at Embiid like, oh, it's his turn, which I just don't like that style of thought, I guess. If you want to say like Embiid's not the best player on the best team, that's Giannis or Jokic. The scoring numbers are there for him, but I don't know. Is that enough to give it to him? It's such a tough call. I'm very interested to see how voters take this one. This has been one of the harder ones, I think, for the last few years. So,
is there anybody else to consider outside of those 3?
I think you got Tatum, and then Doncic would have been up there, but then you added Kyrie. And their success has been just really, a downfall basically. So I think you considered Tatum for those first couple months, but I think he's the clear 4th after the other 3. But he was in the conversation for quite a long time, and I totally get that. Tatum's awesome, and he deserved it. What are you thinking? Are you thinking that this could be a Tatum?
I was trying to think outside the box about somebody like Ja Morant getting in the conversation just because of his explosiveness as a player and the excitement of him, but his gun stuff and everything that happened would take him out of that running.
SGA would be my dark horse under the radar.
Nice.
So SGA to me is because without him, they're just a young tanking team, right? He's got them in potential for the playoffs. If
they make the play-in, it makes sense for him to be at least getting some MVP votes.
Because it's really not far off than when Russell Westbrook won it. He averaged the triple-double, a 30-point triple-double, and it's not like the Thunder were like a top 4 seed in the West that season. They were probably one of the bottom seeds in the West making the playoffs, and that was before the play-in. SGA, to me, I would love to see him get a number. I would like to see him top 5, honestly, behind the big 3 that we're talking about, then Tatum. But SGA is someone I think that is not getting enough for love for what he's doing, and because that team is just, that's a 20-win team without him, and they have some really fun young players. But with the injuries and everything, the year that he is having is not being talked about enough. I'm so impressed.
He's
with
first
SGA.
Team All NBA ahead of a lot of guys that other people would be like, what? He's not better than Damian Lillard. What? He's not better than Steph Curry. It's like, this season
he is. In 2023, SGA, I love. I'm glad we're having this conversation because he to me is not getting enough love in the NBA. So I think he's my dark horse that I would kind of put 5th to at least round out the conversation, and would love to see him get a number of votes. But I like what you said there. First team All NBA. Why not?
Okay. I've got something a little bit more. It's still in this whole idea of not the MVP, but who are legitimate contenders for the NBA championship this year? One of my buddies texted me last night. He's like, "Hey, NBA guy, who do you got winning it all?" And I'm like, man, there's so many people who could be contenders this year that it's hard to say. And there's a lot of parity there because nobody really stands out necessarily. But the more I sat and talked with another one of my buddies, it's the Bucks and the Celtics. And you can put one of those on top of the other as much as you want to do whatever you want. But those are the 2 teams that have the depth to work through some injuries, and obviously you need your best guys to stay healthy, but they could each lose somebody from their core and be like, oh, we still got Rob Williams because Al Horford got hurt, or we really haven't been using Rob Williams anyway, so as important as he was last year, he is not that big of a deal because we got Derek White, which is like a weird non-corollary corollary. I don't know why I said that. Somebody else say something.
Correlation. Uh,
Yep.
okay. Go
So,
ahead, Bird.
yeah, sure, I'll take a swing at this. So, you're talking about pieces that can be easily replaced. Now, I don't know if the Celtics have had injuries throughout this season where they've had different starting lineups, but I do know one team that's out in the Eastern Conference that's had multiple starting lineups, and their best starting lineup has only started 10 or 11 games this season so far, and that is the Milwaukee Bucks. So, from that advantage, when it comes to, well, if there's a guy who gets an injury in the playoffs, I'm definitely going to go with Milwaukee on this one.
I
Do
love
you
it.
think they could weather even having Middleton out? I
Much
suppose that's
better than they could
possible.
last year. Here's the thing,
Okay.
like their whole offseason and all the moves they've made since last year is to be better prepared for the Celtics because they got beat without Middleton and they realized, well, we didn't have the guys to throw at Tatum and Brown. How do we go at a team that has two dominant wing players? Because last year it was George Hill guarding Tatum, Javon Carter a little bit, and some Wes Matthews. Now you've got Jay Crowder, you've got a healthy Chris Middleton, you've got a little bit more size. We also didn't have playmaking off the bench. You've got Joe Ingles for that, and he brings his size with him. I think that a lot of these things together. Plus, you're still bringing back Wes Matthews, who can be very helpful. And one of the Bucks' biggest wins of the season, probably one of their 4 or 5 biggest wins, was against the Clippers. And Wes Matthews was a big part of the team down the stretch that was guarding PG and Kawhi, and that was a big part of why they were able to do what they were able to do. I think you need to see change up things a little bit though. If the Bucks were to face the Celtics and with or without Middleton, Giannis at more times has to face not just be on the other team's worst player to play help defense. It's sometimes he just has to take one of the dominant guys. I think that sometimes we got to see that. And then also I'd like to see more Drew Holiday against Tatum or Brown as opposed to using him on White and Smart at times. I think that's how it needs to be at times. I just think throwing different stuff at them, and not just being stuck to the guys you think that are going to guard them for most of the game. I think you got to try a kind of a slew of different things, and the Bucks are much more prepared to face the Celtics this year, especially with a healthy Chris Middleton, who Celtics fans are afraid of. It's like one of the guys that you'll hear them like. Chris Middleton has crushed them in the playoffs time after time.
Yeah, he's a big shot maker for sure.
Yeah. For the rotation that we saw tonight, so Grayson went out with injury. It looks like a right ankle sprain. That's all that was reported on. So hopefully that's okay and gets better before the playoffs, and that he's good to go. They'll be okay if he has to sit out a couple games and even into the first round. But obviously you'd like his shot making back. But I don't want them to be over reliant of him. But I do feel like the Bucks were running a playoff rotation tonight because this is who you saw off the bench: Bobby Portis, Joe Ingles, Javon Carter, and then some Jay Crowder, but not too much. I still think they're re-ramping him back up after kind of the false start with his most recent injury. He looked a little bit better tonight, but still getting beat off the dribble a little bit too much for my liking. I don't know if that's that he's expecting more help at the rim or what the case is with that. On the note of more help at the rim, I like that I'm seeing Bobby Portis being a little bit more of a shot blocker as opposed to I'm going to get my rebounds so I can average a double-double. And there were times when I felt like he was actually being more of a rim protector, and that was really good at times that you saw him contesting shots and playing a little bit better in the kind of drop coverage defense. So we didn't see Pat Connaughton until basically garbage time. We didn't see Wes Matthews, who I would view as the 10th guy in the rotation. I would view him as number 10 ahead of Pat, and would like to see Wes get minutes. And I think it's interesting that we saw Wes in the first quarter against Boston, but not until garbage time against the Sixers tonight. And I think that says a little bit about how Coach Bud is going to play those matchups depending on what happens in the playoffs and who they're going to face.
I think it's good that he's paring things down ahead of, a little bit ahead of the playoffs, just so that he gets into a rhythm with that group, and also to maybe identify anything that isn't going to work with this group. So, because they're still learning how Jay Crowder is exactly going to fit in, and they're putting a little bit of faith in the idea that his pedigree or his experience over the years is going to be better than what they know they would get from Wes Matthews and Pat Connaughton.
Yeah.
Joe Ingles had a really cool shot though tonight. He was bringing the ball up on a fast break. Bobby Portis was open in the wing. Man, they were leaving Bobby Portis open a lot tonight, which didn't make any sense because he was playing well. And instead of passing to Portis over on the wing, which you would generally think Joe Ingles would be unselfish and would do, he just I don't even know if he faked the pass. He just fired away from three and banged in a shot, and it was pretty awesome. It felt good to know that there's somebody else out there playing with the confidence to have done that too. Bless you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. Terrell, do you want to get in on the rotation and your ideas, or otherwise I'm going to kind of touch on something that Kyle talked about earlier?
Yeah, let's pass on the next topic.
I should have said, You're so good looking.
You're so Seinfeld reference. Hell yeah. All right, Kyle, you asked who are the current contenders, and if I had to pare it down to 5 teams, Bucks and Celtics for sure, and I'm gonna say Clippers, Lakers, Warriors, and the Phoenix. I would put Phoenix Suns would be my 6th team, just on the outside of that 5. The Clippers, I think if they're healthy and not playing Morris as at the 4 anymore, which it looks like they're starting Batum and getting Rocco more time, I like that team. I like that team if they're healthy, man. I really do. I like what Westbrook brings. I think if Kawhi's healthy, that he is a top 3, top 5 player. I think he can be as good as anybody in the league if he's healthy. And defense-wise, that's just a tough team that can switch pretty much everything. The Lakers, the way they've played, now bringing back LeBron, Golden State, they got all the same pieces, and now Wiggins coming back. That's that. I'd like to see how that happens. I know a lot of people have counted them out, but to me, you can't. A team that is so used to playing important games and in the playoffs and has had the same core for so many years, and now it's actually time to ramp up for the playoffs. I'm not counting them out. And actually, that was my pick to start the year, was Bucks and Warriors. So that was my original pick for the finals, and that was my pick last year, and I'm sticking with that for this year for what we have.
Andrew Wiggins come back? That just come out today?
I heard today that he was back in the Bay Area. I heard some reports that he's.
You heard some reports. You read some bullshit online. I don't know. Yeah, I haven't seen that yet. That Wiggins is going to be back, so I wouldn't be relying on that just because we don't know anything about that situation. Other than a bunch of ridiculous rumors that have been refuted by the mama. So, okay. You guys heard those, right?
Mm-mm.
Like why he
God.
You already heard? Okay, then it don't matter.
I hate.
We don't need to talk about it. It doesn't sound legit. So then we'd just be spreading rumors, which
Yeah, let's get into it. No, sometimes stuff happens and stuff comes out like that, and you're like, even if that is the case, which apparently it is not, I don't want to know that. I don't want to know that about Bucks players. I don't want to know that about it. I don't want to know. I don't know. There's just certain stuff that we as fans don't need to know about players' personal life, and the whole Andrew Wiggins things has just been bizarre this year, and we don't need to know, and that's okay.
It's not that big of a deal.
Yeah.
Anyways,
well, let's have some fun. Kyle, some stuff you want to talk about?
Oh wait, we were still actually talking about the fact that the teams that you were listing as possible contenders.
Sure.
So you didn't list the Suns though, did you?
I said that they were. So if I had to pick 5, I picked
the Bucks, Clippers, the Warriors, and the Lakers, with the Bucks and the Celtics. Yeah.
Yep. And the Suns would be my 6th. They're just outside that 5.
Man, there's just okay, but the Lakers, I don't know that they have the pieces. You can say that Anthony Davis and LeBron are enough, but if you're looking at how much they've got supporting them and then what the Bucks have, I don't think that there's enough. Not for 7 games. The Warriors, yeah, it's a very similar team, or they've still got their main guys, which gives you faith that they're going to be a threat for the championship, if obviously with them being in the playoffs. But the guys they don't have are understated players who, in Otto Porter and Nemanja Bjelica, who were just like huge off the bench for them last year. And you're asking a lot from like Jonathan Kuminga right now to be a really key contributor consistently in the playoffs. And he's been pretty darn good for a lot of this season, but he would have to be even better and even more consistent. I mean, Kevon Looney's is awesome in his role, but you still are going to need Kuminga, even if he's coming off the bench in the playoffs, for him to be a really consistent option for you to win it all, I think.
Well, I also think that you got Dante DiVincenzo to take over
I do like him.
that Gary Payton role, and now you also potentially have Gary Payton. So I think I like what they bring off the bench. If they face a big team, that would be my concern for the Warriors. But in terms of like switchability and defense, I mean, I like what the Warriors have, and the whole championship pedigree thing, and like it's all real, man. They just won it all with basically this same team.
No,
Let me ask
I
this,
mean,
though.
after you talking about them like that, they feel like the third most likely to win it, behind the Celtics and the Bucks.
Let me ask you this question, though. How much of a factor is it to win on the road? Like, or how much weight do you put on road games in the playoffs? Like it. Okay, here. Let me ask you. Let me ask it a little bit different here. So, the team with the worst record on the road in the Western Conference, who do you think it is?
Warriors. It's the Warriors. They
the
started
Warriors.
off like, I don't think they won their first game on the road till like close to Christmas or something wild.
Yep, they're 9-30 this season on the road. The team with the best record on the road in the West is, any guesses?
Clippers will be my guess.
The Sacramento Kings.
Oh, wow.
So I don't know how much of a factor that plays into it, how a team can play on the road and how they can perform on the road in the playoffs, or is it mainly just who's gelling at this time?
It might be something stupid too, like their mass rest days that they do, where they just essentially give up a game, are all on the road.
That's fair. Something to think about. I still, it's hard for me to turn my head and against the Warriors and what they offer right now. But yeah, awful on the road this season. You can't ignore it. And they're a team that's going to have to play on the road. They're not going to be the home team in really any series, right? They don't have a chance of finishing a top 4 because we haven't really talked much about the Grizzlies at all, but do you guys, in terms of championship possibility, the Grizzlies are not in your top 5 or 6 either, it sounds like?
I just think that they still need to have more experience. But they have some huge pieces in Morant and Desmond Bane and Jaren Jackson Jr. And obviously Steven Adams is a very nice contributor when he's available.
Yeah, and they actually play defense too. Like if you look at the standings, the teams that play defense in the Western Conference, they're 1 and 2 the best defensive teams, which is the Nuggets and the Grizzlies, according to the stats.
A little surprised by the Nuggets on defense because sometimes when I watch them and I watch Jokic, I'm just like, God, just take it to the rim, go at him every time, because he's not a rim defender, he's not a shot blocker, and I'm surprised more teams, but they have good pieces set up around him. Aaron Gordon has been very good on defense. Bruce Brown it was a great pickup for them. I like some of the things that they have and that they do. I'm very surprised though that they're that high in terms of defense though. That's kind of a shock to me. Terrell, do you have your top five? I know you got Bucks and Celtics in your top five for championship possibility. Who's your Western Conference team if you had to choose right now, Terrell? Or give me the three to give me that top five.
I can't give you top five. I'll just give you the team that's going to come on the West for me.
Okay.
I think it's a team that is about to get hot right now, and I'm going to stick with my pick from the very first episode we did this season, and that was the Golden State Warriors. I think the Nuggets have really good defense, interior defense, that is. They have really good interior post play, but their style of play is a little, I guess it works, but it's boring, but it's also defendable at times. Whereas the Warriors, if you have 3 or 4 different outside shooters a night, well, look out. Who are you going to defend?
Exactly. I like that there's parity in the Western Conference. I like that it's a bit of a crapshoot. I mean, we're still talking about some of the same old names, but it does feel more up for grabs this year, and I like that. I'm so excited, even just for the plan, to see how that kind of seeds out and works, and what we get out of hopefully the Thunder. And there's just so many fun matchups really from the get-go that we're gonna see, because you might see Lakers or Golden State in playing. There's some really fun stuff. I was kind of hoping, just because I'm not entertained by the Timberwolves, this is nothing against them. I've often really liked teams that they've had, but I was kind of hoping that they would be the team to kind of fall out of playoff contention. And while I'm also interested in seeing the Mavs miss the playoffs, they would be a fun team to see get in the play-in and kind of see what Kyrie and Luka could do together, and when it's kind of backs against the wall situation. But Kyle, do you have your preferred West Coast team
to challenge for the championship?
Yeah, after Bucks and Celtics, who would be your West Coast team? Who's going to be a Western Conference team? Who's going to represent?
I do think the Warriors have the most pieces put together, just because you can't trust the Clippers to be healthy, and as obviously they can challenge if you've got Paul George and Kawhi Leonard, and then the depth that team has in certain regards. The Clippers can certainly challenge for the championship as well. I don't really trust that the Phoenix Suns have enough past Durant and Booker. Like, I don't think they have enough on defense.
I think they gave up too much. Basically, you lost your 3 best 3-and-D guys from the championship season and from last season. With Crowder's gone, Mikal Bridges is gone, Cam Johnson's gone. Those were 3 huge contributors, 3-and-D guys, 3 guys that can switch and play D on most positions. How much are you going to put? Is Torrey Craig going to be playing 35, 40 minutes in the playoffs campaign? I don't know. These are, I think the Suns are still a couple of just solid bench players away from really being there. But at the same time, I'm not totally counting them out, because Durant gets hot. I mean, can score as good as anybody we've ever seen in the league. So I don't want to totally count him out. And you've still got Ayton, you've still got CP3, you've still got Booker, who can get also as hot as anybody. Like, that's a crazy scoring duo that could put up 70 points a game in the playoffs, which is just insane.
That's just it. One of those two should be scoring 40 points a night, or trading on and off in the playoffs. Like, they should be trying. If you're trying to win the championship, you should be putting your foot on people's throats with what you have, and what that team has is Devin Booker and Kevin Durant to enforce their will. But yeah, the Nuggets, they're still in a prove me situation. The Grizzlies, similar. Even if they do have it's Jaren Jackson Jr. If there's going to be the problem with some of the perspective on Jaren Jackson Jr. is he has been limited to like 28 minutes per game a lot of the season. So that's put a damper on his production in certain regards, where it's like if he was playing an extra 4 minutes per game, would he have another block per game? And they finally have started to give him more minutes, and that's going to give him a bigger profile statistically to match up with those arguments for things like the MVP. And then as Jaren Jackson shows off more of his offensive repertoire over the coming seasons too, he's going to be somebody who's challenging for that, and he's going to help make the Grizzlies feel more solidified as a contender in the coming years, even more than Ja Morant. A lot of people will probably be like, who's the best player on the Grizzlies? And it's like, it's Jaren Jackson Jr. If you're talking both sides of the ball and
Right.
impact.
Yeah. There's 4 teams to me in the Western Conference that I think just benefit from experience here. And one of them is the Suns, just to have KD playing with those guys. The Grizzlies, again, just you've got your running back, a very similar squad to what you've had the last couple years, but a little bit more playoff experience is huge. The Kings, any sort of playoff experience for them is a big deal. And then the Thunder, of course, who really none of these guys have been in this kind of situation, and anything for them is really just icing on the cake for the season that they've had. And I don't think they can finish with even above a 500 record. I think they need to win out to get 500. Even then, it's a big deal for them to be in the play-in. If they can win the play-in and get into that actual first round, I think that's a huge deal for the Thunder, and excited to see that. Go ahead, Kyle.
So I don't really understand how the Jazz have seemingly been kind of resting guys. Now, maybe Jordan Clarkson's just that injured, but it kind of felt like initially as if it's just hard to tell at this time of the season too, whether or not teams are kind of mailing it in or whatnot. Lauri Markkanen has been dealing with a hand injury, so he played on Sunday. But it's just weird to see teams give up before they're seemingly give up in certain regards before they're genuinely ruled out of the potential. Because how good would it be for this Jazz team if they truly are looking at some of their guys as being core pieces of their future, to put them in that situation, to take Lauri Markkanen and put him in the playoffs and say, okay, can you continue to be as good as you've been all season, or are you going to get exposed? And that might actually be a reason for them not to want him to go play in the playoffs, is because they don't want Lauri Markkanen or any of their players who might be trade chips this season to get exposed in the playoffs. But that's a little bit maybe too
reading into the tea leaves.
Yeah, too tanking conspiratorial.
Potential new collective bargaining agreement. You guys want to touch on this at all? Anything that you guys found interesting and or you were surprised at? I guess I'm a little bit surprised at some things. It's something we could maybe foreshadow, I guess, or kind of tease for our next episode. But I don't know if you guys saw anything you wanted to get off your chest on this show.
There was the whole thing about how the season awards, you have to have a game threshold of 65 games played.
Yep.
And there are loopholes to that could be taken advantage of, where teams just start playing guys for the first quarter.
Sure. Drew Holiday just last year needed to have a certain amount of games to get like a $500,000 or $1 million bonus, and it was based on games played. He started the game. They tipped the ball. Drew Holiday fouled somebody on a reach-in foul, came out of the game, and got his bonus money for games played. So that's one of the things that NBA fans are worried about that we're going to see for players to get the season awards, is that a player starts just to get a start in a game played, logged on their stats for the year so they can hit that threshold and then become eligible for MVP, defensive player, on and on.
And this might even extend to like all first team and all that kind of stuff too.
I believe it does. That was my understanding. And they're going positionless for all NBA first team. So you're not going to see, it has to be a guard, it has to be a forward and a center. It's going to be the 5 best players, section 1, the 5 best players, 6 through 10, and then 11 through 15 is my understanding that it's going to be positionless.
That's the first time they're doing it, is this year?
Yeah, I think they.
Yeah,
Yeah,
start what the
No, I'm
the
sorry.
65 game limit starts next year.
It doesn't start this year, but it'll go into effect next year. But that's something that's in the current agreement, basically, that players have agreed to as well.
So guys that then wouldn't be able to win any awards: Kevin Durant 45 games so far, Damian Lillard 58, Steph Curry 53,
What about
Anthony Davis 52,
JJJ? Because it's kind of him and Brooke for Defensive Player of the Year. Not that they're the only two, but
Jaren Jackson's at 60 games right now.
He's at 60 games, so I don't think he could hit 65. So that would probably go to Brooke Lopez for Defensive Player of the Year.
Yeah, nobody has more than 4 games remaining. So yeah.
Okay, yeah. I guess a week from today is when the season ends, and so very interesting stuff. There was some other stuff too. I don't know. We can get into it another time, but. Look at us, close to an hour. This has been our longest episode so far. We just couldn't give it up tonight. Terrell is ready to go take another poop.
Jesus. Devin Booker wouldn't be able to be on any of the first, second, or third team because he's only played in 51 games. Miles Turner wouldn't be in contention of anything. Not that probably matters. Can't really see anybody else that it necessarily would be an egregious thing. Like nobody gives a crap that Zion Williamson's not going to win anything when he's only played in 29 games. So,
God, what's Giannis at? If this was the case implemented this season, is he going to hit 65? He's sat out a number of games. There's always the knee soreness. He had the wrist injury around the All-Star break. So he's someone that I was wondering if he might be at that 65 marker right now.
He should be fine because he'll likely rest in one of these back-to-back games coming up, right?
Yep.
And he's at 62 right now. So he'll get to 65. So he would have been fine.
Okay.
But I mean, I like that just because as somebody who works in the fantasy basketball industry and loves fantasy basketball, it's extremely frustrating to deal with players being out all the time and resting on random nights. And it can make the game a lot more frustrating to manage and to enjoy when it can come down to a random rest based on, sometimes it's not a legitimate injury. It's just a planned rest. And those can be hard to stomach sometimes.
No, I think it's frustrating for everybody. If you're someone who buys the tickets to a game and the player that you came to see, that you wore their jersey and went out and bought their jersey, and that's the one game you're going to go to, and maybe you drove from 5 hours away to go see them. It sucks. It sucks. All right, it's everyone's favorite segment. Here we go. It's Terrell talking about The Bachelor. Terrell, what did we see this week?
Oh, you haven't heard. Well, the season's over.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so
stop it.
Yeah, it was a big deal. So we predicted that Gabby was going to get super emotional and her connection with Zach was falling apart, and she was right. So she showed up to the final ceremony, and Zach goes, "We had such a good time," and there was the dreaded "but," and she goes, "Don't say it. I don't need to hear it. I don't need to hear it. Just let me go." And then she leaves. Katie comes out of the limo, walks down final ceremony, and they live happily ever after. The end.
Wow, thank you so much. Now that you don't have The Bachelor to watch for the next 8 months, what do you do? What's the next thing you look forward to? Are you getting on that Oak Island train?
No, I'm watching Snowfall, of course. It's
Snowfall?
Season 6 of Snowfall. So it's about the crack cocaine epidemic in South Central Los Angeles back in the 80s.
Sure.
And
epidemic or opportunity?
Thank you, Ronald Reagan.
Depends on how you look at it. But yeah, I've been watching Snowfall for, ever since it came out. And
Is this a what kind of series is this? Is this a documentary series, or is this like there's actually actors playing out situations that happen, like Freeway Rick Ross and all that stuff?
no, it's a drama series, but
Okay.
they say it's some of the stuff is
Based on
like,
real drug deals.
yeah, they're trying to say like some of the stuff is based on true events, and it's like, okay,
Okay.
no, like like the involvement. So what it is there's three groups. There's the cartels with the cocaine. There's the what do you call them? I, I don't. They call them gangbangers in the show. The
Okay.
dealers, the drug dealers that
Sure.
sell out in Compton,
Yep.
and then there's another side of it, which is the government, the CIA, their involvement, so
Sure. Getting
that the cocaine doesn't get busted when it
I got
crosses
the
borders.
cocaine from the Contra, all the whole. Yeah. Okay.
Yep. And now they're bringing in another party, the KGB, and they're trying to shut down their
Zavashans.
the Russians, yeah.
All
So
right. Snowfall.
yeah,
Where do you get Snowfall at? Where is that at?
it's on FX.
Okay. Very interesting. Kyle, what are you streaming right now?
Um, oh, biscuits. I always have something going on in the background. When you were talking about last week, I think it was off the podcast. Actually, you were mentioning the fact that you were going to rewatch all the Star Wars or whatever. I was kind of giving you a bunch of weird looks for no good reason, and it was mostly because I just finished rewatching most of Star Trek or Star Wars.
Yeah.
So you were talking about, I don't know if I'm going to go through these, or I don't know if I'm going to go through that, and it was kind of me. I was sharing a lot of like faces with you over the video, where it was essentially like my reaction to the different things that you were saying, like, no, yeah, because there's just a lot of junk that you have to determine, like, is it worth watching 23 episodes for 7 seasons of Star Wars Clone
Yes.
Wars or whatever. So,
Yes.
but only 3 years or 3 seasons of Star Wars Rebels with less episodes and all this kind of stuff. But, anyways.
Okay. And that's where I'm going with that is like, yeah, currently I'm going to try and go through the Star Wars series, but I just wanted to see what your opinion was is how necessary the cartoons are to include in, if I'm going through the whole, like Disney Plus has it set up, the Star Wars timeline. And there's 3 different cartoons at least set up through there. And one of them, like you said, is 7 seasons. So I don't know, should I include those? Can I skip them? Is there maybe a website I should check out that says, just watch these handful of episodes and no big deal and you should be okay?
I mean, it depends on how big of a Star Wars fan you are, obviously. If you like, I haven't been able to bring myself to watch that Bad Batch show that's
Sure.
about the clones.
Yeah.
But I also haven't been able to bring myself to truly sit and watch all the Clone War cartoons. Now, the original Clone War cartoons that were like these mini shorts on like Toonami or what's it called, the Cartoon Network.
Okay.
Those were animated and created by the dude who did Samurai Jack. So the fighting animation is just super dope, and
Okay.
it was, and like the way he has the Jedi using their powers is awesome. And so that's a lot of fun to watch if you're just into that Samurai Jack kind of silent animation style where it's just chaos destruction and a lot of fun.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah. All interesting stuff.
But the new trilogy sucks. I tried watching it again. It sucks. The original trilogy is still legit. It always will be.
Yep. And your thoughts on Mandalorian?
I love it.
And
I
good as
the,
anything since the first trilogy, yeah.
Oh yeah, totally. And if anything, like that's maybe what you'd look up if you were trying to see what episodes should I go watch and you want to learn more about Bo-Katan and her sister and all that. The Mandalorians, that there's probably like 15 to 20 episodes that you could focus on to watch.
Yeah.
Instead of a lot of the other stuff, because then you'd get more introductions to the Darksaber as well, especially in Star Wars Rebels.
I'll totally include in my watching is anything that was shot with live actors. So I'm going to watch the 9 movies, I guess make it 11 with Solo, which I haven't seen yet, and Andor or Sorry, it's Rogue One. But I'll watch Andor. I'll watch the Obi-Wan series. I will watch Mandalorian. I will watch the Boba Fett series. So I'll include all those for sure in my watching or rewatching of Star Wars. And there's some things I haven't seen yet because I haven't watched Andor yet. I haven't seen Solo yet. This most recent trilogy was a bummer. That first movie made me feel really good in theaters when I saw it, but I also might have been in a different space and time in a galaxy far, far away, if you catch my drift. You know what? Everything's legal here in Oregon. Who cares? Um, so, yeah. Well, I'm going to watch anything that has actual live actors. Star Wars. Bird, have you ever been a Star Wars guy? You ever play any Magic? You a big Pokemon guy? What's the nerdiest
Those are
thing
not
about
the
you?
same things.
I'm trying to. Here's the thing. I don't think Terrell is a big into any nerd culture type of thing. Like he was always into sports and lifting weights and stuff. So I'm interested to see. I'm interested to see like what he thinks the nerdiest thing that he's into. And
He used to play Pogs.
Well, let me put it this way. I grew up and I went to a
he played
Catholic
with
high.
dolls.
Yeah, no.
That's
No,
okay.
I had two sisters and they were into Barbies. I still have two sisters.
And-
Jeez, we're off to a hot start here. So, so growing up, went to St. Stanislaus Elementary, St. Peter Middle School, and Pacelli High School, all Catholic schools. And the rule was that we could not watch Harry Potter, Star Wars, Star Trek, any of that stuff. No fantasy whatsoever. So
None of it?
I never got into it. The only fantasy that I really watched was I got my wisdom teeth pulled, all four of them, and I was on the couch for about a week, and I watched Lord of the Rings all the way through.
Nice.
So that's about it for me.
Are you
Historical
still in-
drama. You
Are
love
you?
'em.
Did you like them? Like, what's your thoughts on? Like, will you still watch them if a new movie, a new Hobbit comes out or whatever, or the new series on Amazon or whatever? Like, do you get into that whole lore, or where are you at with that?
I don't have enough teeth to be pulled, so I don't watch the new stuff. I'll say the first one wasn't that good for me, but obviously that's a plot builder. The Two Towers I thought was really good, and Return of the King is probably as equally as good as Two Towers. So yeah,
You've never watched Game of Thrones then? That's like
I've seen one episode, and it was the Hodor episode. Hold the door.
Okay.
Hold the
Okay.
door.
okay. Wow. Spoilers.
What do you mean? You've seen it.
Yeah, I have. Yeah.
I saw the first handful of episodes of Game of Thrones, but wasn't in a situation where I was like paying attention attentively. And same thing with the first Lord of the Rings movie. So that might actually be the next thing that I maybe need to go back and check out. Kyle, you're pretty familiar with Lord of the Rings, I'm guessing?
Oh yeah, I love Lord of the Rings. I've been working from home for so long. I've rewatched that trilogy, the extended editions, several times, just letting it stream in the background and being like, "Go get him, Frodo."
That was gonna be my next question. You're somebody who's like, no, you got to watch like the 6-hour versions.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's really important to watch Aragorn go and get that ghost army.
Ghost Army. Speaking of Ghost Army, you should rate and review and follow our podcast. We should find it.
Wow.
You should subscribe. You should hit the like button. You should smash the bell. You should love us and do all that you can to support our show.
Especially if you've been here this long. We'll have to integrate those asks earlier in the show next time.
Yeah,
But
that's
nice,
probably
good
not a
call.
bad idea.
Wow, way to be professional.
Yeah, we're bringing it all together. All right, this was our longest show by this is twice the size of our next longest show. It's been a pleasure hanging out with you guys, and we'll get something going here before the end of the season, and expect to see a lot of us throughout the playoffs. For Terrell Drevick, Kyle McEwen, I'm Anthony Deneau. We will catch you next time. Thank you.
I love you.
Terrell, can I get a boom?
Boom.